For those of you who don't know me, hi, I'm Benabel, a Taiwanese American who is dedicated to the serious study and living practice of Taoism, esoteric Buddhism, Chinese folk religion, and Asian occult traditions. I hope I can help my fellow Asian diaspora reconnect with the mysteries and folk magic of our heritage, and by extension, help a wider audience better understand Asian mystical traditions from a native practitioner's perspective. This is a module on the Taoist concept of soul dualism, which is going to be essential background knowledge for understanding and mastering the wider topic of soul retrieval rituals. Soul dualism is a belief found across many East Asian spiritual and mystical traditions, and is the premise of shamanic and spirit mediumship practices such as soul retrieval, calling the soul home, and spiritual hygiene practices around preventing soul fragmentation. It's my mission to preserve and pass on our ancestral folk practices and this cultural knowledge to our diaspora, especially among those who are Huayi, to foster a spiritual community amongst those of us living beyond our ancestral homeland. Of course, I am but one perspective, and while I cite all of my sources from historical, publicly accessible primary texts, that isn't the end-all be-all. So always bear in mind that there are diverse views within Taoist and Buddhist communities, and honor the complexity of these traditions by recognizing that Chinese folk magic may look very different from region to region, enclave to enclave, and even generation to generation. Hun-Po, one word, meaning soul, yet containing the dual concepts of Hun and Po, resonant with the Chinese philosophy that everything in nature exists through a dynamic interdependent relationship of complementary opposites, yin and yang, yin-yang. Thus, the nature of soul itself is a whole made up of two complementary yet oppositional parts. Hun is light, ethereal. It's your divine genius, the seed within you that's divine. It logs your karma. This is knowledge, wisdom, psychic intuition, sensitivity to the unseen, and lucid dreams. Po is dense, heavy. It's the log of your memories. This is also instinct, sensation, impulses. It's your shadow. Po reflects your attachments. In a previous video, we mentioned the Taoist alchemist, physician, and scientist Geng's Baopuzi, arguably one of the most important grimoires and alchemical texts in the Taoist canon. If Hun or Po, soul, is fragmented from the body for too long, the body will get sicker and may die prematurely. Geng's writings reflect a broader current in medieval Chinese thought regarding health. Illnesses, be that physical or mental, could be understood as spiritual imbalances that lead to fragmentation of the Hun-Po, and thus by extension, soul fragmentation explains certain mental, emotional, and behavioral imbalances which, left untreated, can become physical disorders. If, in theory, you can somehow maintain continuity of yin-yang balance of your Hun-Po, then it was believed that you could, in fact, live for perpetuity. In other words, the classical Taoist belief in cultivating immortality. Also, some folk traditions hold that spirit mediums and psychics are born with unusually active Hun aspects of soul, creating a lifelong imbalance that required continual cultivation and spiritual hygiene. The hyperactive or abnormal extraordinary growths of their Hun would in turn cause their Po to go off kilter, which was the spiritual explanation for why psychics, spirit mediums, or those on a shamanic path tend to experience hypersensitivity, behavioral health disorders, neurodivergence, and other atypical neurological patterns. Yet it is exactly this imbalance in the Hun-Po that endows us with the ability to enter altered states of consciousness, to commune and interact with spirit realms, and to perceive through an extraordinary sixth sense. In fact, prior to clinical psychology and neuroscience, many unusual behaviors, altered states, emotional disturbances, and cognitive differences were explained through Hun-Po theory. Records of Hun-Po soul dualism date back to the Zhou dynasty. On screen, you're looking at some of the key source texts we'll be citing for this video lecture on soul dualism and its practice in ancient and early medieval China. In Xuan, a text from the 6th century BC, it's noted that at the conception of human life, the Po is formed initially, and then from Po arises the Yang aspect of soul called Hun. In Da Dai Li Ji, or records and rituals collected by Dai the Elder, dated to around 206 BC to 8 AD, Hun and Po are the essences of yin and yang, the root of life. When death arrives, the Hun Qi rises upward to heaven and becomes Shen, while the corporeal Po descends to earth and becomes Gui. Likewise, per the Li Ji, or Book of Rites, a text dated to the 2nd century BC, the Hun Qi returns to heaven and the Po forms return to earth. In other words, to the question, what is your soul made of? The answer is, first, there's something non-physical from the earthly realm that forms, and then in response to what has formed, it begets or attracts something non-physical from the heavenly realm. Fused together, that's your soul. Just like your physical body, it grows and develops, can get strong, and it can get sick. And the health of this soul and the health of your body are interdependent. When you die, the forms, Xing, of your Po returns to earth, or more accurately, in terms of concept, an underworld or netherworld, and the Qi of your Hun returns to heaven. Which is also to say that the Hun aspect of your soul, the Yang, which is light, is what ascends and reincarnates after death, whereas the Po aspect of your soul is dense and heavy dark matter or dark energy that remains here in this universe. And so when we say we are summoning the spirits of our ancestors or certain persons that once were living, we're interacting with that Po aspect of their soul. We also believe that the Po aspect of soul, that ghostly part, possesses certain powers and abilities to help the living. This belief can be sourced to Luanheng, a text from the 1st century AD that describes the Hun-Po as possessing great powers, and the living is able to feed and thus help them expand those powers, which for us explains the importance of ancestor veneration. When you honor and remember your ancestors, that energy you're feeding to them is strengthening their powers, which in turn helps them to help you. But back to citing ancient Chinese source texts so that you can see how these ideas were expressed by the tradition's own canonized authorities. The Bai Hu Tong, one of the coolest compilations of lots of cool ideas, notes that the Hun-Po soul is itself like a body and has a form that changes in accordance with but beyond the physical body. Emotions cause changes to the Hun-Po soul aspects. Po is the force that dominates and drives your innate predisposition. The Songs of Chu, Chu Ci, from the Warring States period preserving Zhou dynasty thought, vividly describes Wu shamanistic practices such as astral spirit travels, soul retrievals, spirit journeys, and spirit summonings. In one of the poems or songs summoning the soul, Zhao Hun, there's a legendary Wu shamanist, Wu Yang, who we know is a female sorceress through context clues, but also put a pin in that, who is performing a soul retrieval ritual. It's about a person whose soul has fragmented and parts of it have left the body, and a supreme deity, a god, commissions this Wu shamanist to help this guy out. So she starts by performing a divination to determine what the problem is, then journeys to go call the soul back home to its body. Very cool. But back to gender, it's complicated, and a very strong, credible argument can be made that it's gender bending. The yang might suggest male or masculine, but then many other details and also historical context for the wu during this era suggests female presenting. Also, Hun-Po could be used to refer to the spirit of a culture or time, a zeitgeist, a genius loci. In texts like Shuoyuan, Garden of Persuasions from the Western Han Dynasty, Hun-Po can refer to a people's morale. In summary, when we look at pre-Qin texts, Hun-Po was a term meaning one's soul, spirit, psyche, psychological state, the karma resulting in your psychological state, and in so many ways essentially means something akin to what we mean today when we say behavioral health or emotional state at the personal level, and zeitgeist or perhaps genius loci on a collective level. And on that collective level, Hun-Po refers to the soul of a nation. So the soul health of a nation can fragment. And if it does, then the physical health and vigor of that nation is headed toward downfall. When you think about how to sustain the spiritual health of a person, you can extrapolate that out to consider how you might sustain the spiritual health of a country or kingdom. Understanding Hun-Po is fundamental to traditional Chinese medicine, as we see in the Huangdi Neijing or inner canon of the Yellow Emperor, and specifically how the Hun-Po factors in to the Wuxing 5 elemental phases. Hun, the yang aspect of soul, is connected to your liver system under the TCM framework. Po, the yin aspect of soul, connects directly and interdependently to the health of your lungs and associated functions. The Huangdi Neijing, or the Yellow Emperor's inner canon, dated to sometime between 400 and 200 BC, remains to this day the authoritative text on Hun-Po and 5 elemental correspondences, how soul health connects to physical health. The heart, corresponding with fire, is the hub of all 5 major organ systems in traditional Chinese medicine and is closely tied to Shen, which the Huangdi Neijing tells us gives rise to the Hun aspect of soul. The kidneys, corresponding to water, is what regulates the health of Jing, which gives rise to the Po aspect of soul. The spleen and stomach area corresponds with earth and is tied to what we translate as willpower, one's will, drive, motivation, purpose. This is destiny-directed orientation and ambitions. This schema is called the 5 spirits, Wu Shen or Wu Zang Shen, as further detailed in the Yellow River Hermit's commentaries on Lao Tzu. Note in Ling Shu from the Huangdi Neijing, the spleen or stomach area is attributed to Yi, which essentially refers to one's will and intentions, though Yi is more cognitive, intellectualized, and self-aware than the previous Zhi, which implied a more intuition, feeling-driven willpower. And so from this ancient Chinese medicine perspective, liver health is most closely tied to the spiritual and internal energy health of Hun aspects of soul, but secondarily connects to your heart and supernal consciousness or transcendent altered states of consciousness. Hence, the folk association with spirit mediums, psychics, shamans, and dream workers, whereas lung or respiratory health is most closely tied to the spiritual and internal energy health of Po aspects of soul, which secondarily connects to your kidneys and Jing nutritive essence and primal drives and instincts. Under this folk theory, those with soul fragmentation of the Hun are more likely to have their liver health impacted, whereas those with soul fragmentation of the Po are more likely to experience adverse health impact to their respiratory health, immune system, and nervous system, and left unattended develops into heart and kidney issues. In Taoism, there's a popular enumeration of 3 Hun and 7 Po facets of the soul, making up the whole for a total sum of 10, which parallels the cycle of 10 we find in Chinese lunisolar astrology, which all connects to the Lo Shu magic square as both a macrocosmic and microcosmic spirit map. The numerology of 10 in Chinese cosmology signifies totality, completion, completion, cyclical wholeness. And so when you look at the corners of the magic square, the polarities all equal 10. We saw this as resonant with observations of the human body having 10 fingers, 10 toes, and in ancient China, the gestation period was counted as 10 lunar months. Mapped out to the fundamental structure of the cosmos, 10 parts made up the one whole of our soul. The San Hun Qi Po, or 3 ethereal and 7 corporeal soul concept, is traced back to Gehong's Bao Pu Zi from the Jin dynasty. He is one of the primary source texts we cite to on this Taoist principle of 3 Hun and 7 Po categories of soul. The exact quote and direct translation is in the show notes, so here I'll paraphrase. The alchemist and physician Gehong is describing a great medicine, Da Yao, as the elixir that will empower you to commune with spirits and attain all sorts of extraordinary powers. He describes a special technique in Taoist alchemy called dissolve or divide and then coagulate, or in Western alchemy, we might say solvate coagula, metal and water. If you can master this technique, you will be able to perceive your 3 Hun and 7 Po and their residences within your body as celestial and earthly spirits. Subsequent Taoist lineages then further developed Gehong's concept of 3 Hun and 7 Po, mapping out correspondences to other metaphysical systems, attributing names and assigned functions, and specialized methodologies for soul retrieval depending on which aspect of Hun-Po's soul was determined to be fragmented. You also see references to 3 Hun and 7 Po in classical literature, such as the 16th century Ming Dynasty novels Journey to the West, 西游记, which you might know as the Monkey King, and Investiture of the Gods, 封神演义, which totally relates to esoteric magical shamanic I Ching. In the realm of Chinese folk magic, Xing describes a very specific ritual where you use a mirror, hence 金水, and you gaze into your own reflection, and then through meditative ritual incantations, you can alter your state of consciousness and be able to perceive symbolic or spirit visualizations of your 3 Hun and 7 Po. 金水分形, 三魂七魄, 众神显灵. Dark and light divide, forms now flowing free. From earth the 7 and heaven the 3, spirits bright these 10 I now do see. In the downloadable study notes, I'll be sharing a practicum for more intermediate and advanced practitioners to try. You don't need to have prior knowledge or experience in Taoist ritual magic, but you do need experience in some tradition or form of ceremonial magic because that's going to be useful, dare I say, a prerequisite. According to Gehong, this visualization practice can help you perceive your own soul through your psychic senses, visualizing them as 10 spirit entities within. He further claims that mastery of the technique enables communion with celestial and subterranean gods, and even the spirits of mountains and rivers. Let's get into how the 3 Hun 7 Po aligns with the Lo Shu magic square, this macrocosmic and microcosmic spirit map. Earlier, we noted that the Hun rises, which follows the rising of the sun from the eastern sector of the Lo Shu mapping of the cosmos. And just as the sun sets in the west, the Po descends in accordance with the map of the Lo Shu, pictorializing the architecture of the universe. Heaven, earth, and the underworld, 3 by 3, creating a cube of space. Thought I'd just casually drop that comparison into the video for our fellow Western occultists and hermetic Kabbalists to ponder over. If you're like, Lo Shu Square, what's that? We've covered this ad nauseum in past videos, so if the concept is new to you, I'll provide links in the video description box. I mean, not to be dramatic about it, but it is one of the most important fundamental principles in Eastern metaphysics. We also conceptualize Hun-Po soul dualism as twin pillars, 2 internal polarities that are reconciled within you into one system of soul or spiritual life force that your physical health, wellness, and vitality are dependent on. Hun is where your karma is embedded, the part of you that reincarnates and ascends after death, and it's your divine genius, inspiration, intelligence, hidden potential, your mandate of heaven or your predetermined destiny and life purpose. Po are 7 fundamental forces that weigh you down, are why you are incarnate. It's what keeps you alive and why you feel alive, heavy in your physical form, and ultimately shapes the development of your Hun. And for my fellow Western occultists who are thinking, this sure rhymes with principles found in Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, well, I'm with you. It sure does. We source the names of the 3 Hun and 7 Po from scroll 54 of the Yunji Qi 7 tablets of sacred writings, which is essentially a 11th century Taoist grimoire containing a wealth of resources on food talisman crafting, exorcisms, and methods of both inner alchemy and outer alchemy, anthologizing much older primary source texts now lost in time. For those interested in I Ching mysticism, there's a lot on that topic in 7 tablets. In terms of the Yunji Qi importance in esoteric Taoism, I might liken it to what the Zohar is to the Kabbalah. However, beyond that, there is no universally agreed upon authoritative source for the meanings or attributions of the 3 Hun 7 Po beyond overarching generalizations distinguishing between Hun and Po. Instead, what you do have are different lineages claiming that divine transmission of the true names or true forms and their characteristics have been granted to them, and then competing interpretations arise. Though generally speaking, Hun is light, ethereal of an upper realm, and it's the part of soul you were born with that contains a divine seed, what gives you a sense of higher purpose or destiny. It's your luminosity, your spark, inspiration, imagination, and creativity. In terms of soul travel, vision states, spirit journeys, encounters with gods or ancestors, or lucid dreaming that facilitates revelation, insight, healing, or creativity and genius, that's your Hun at work. Po is heavy, dense, of a lower realm, and it's the part of soul you were born with that makes you, well, you in this current incarnation and embodiment. The 7 aspects of Po are essentially, if I were to aggregate, distill, and summarize the collective texts, it's your primal instinct for survival, for justice or vengeance. It's your sexuality and reproductive drive, consumption, corruptibility, how you deal with waste and decay, and how you navigate pain and suffering. It's how you deal with mortality. In summary, the Hun Yang part of our soul is where karma is embedded, and therefore upon death, it is the Hun that reincarnates or ascends, whereas the Po Yin part of our soul is earthbound, considered dense, heavy, is the ghostly part of you that remains behind after death. The key to good health is the 3 Hun at peace, placated, and the 7 Po stabilized and well grounded. Hence the popular spell incantation of An San Hun, Ding Qi Po, along with the 6-syllable mantra Om Mani Padme Hum in soul retrieval traditions. My takeaway from the dozens of source texts I've studied is that ultimately we refer back to what Gehong said in Bao Pu Zi, which is you need to engage in self-cultivation practices and then acquire the ability to see for yourself your own Hun Po and what you see, how you see them, and engage with these active aspects within will determine everything else that follows. So stick with me for the long haul, and I'll show you how. Somewhat related to the 3 Hun, let's talk about the 3 vermin, or 3 corpse spirits. In Gehong's Bao Pu Zi, he writes, "It is further said that within the body resides the 3 corpses. You'll also see this term cited in subsequent grimoires and alchemical texts as San Chong, or the 3 vermins. Yes, this is related to hexagram 18 from the I Ching, Gu, poison, and the branch of Taoist magic called Gu Dao, poison magic. Oh, and out of curiosity, how many of you were around to have seen this old Tinkering Bell video on poison magic? The three vermin reside within the three inner dantian alchemical elixir fields or reservoirs where the three forces of Jing Qi Shen converge. In the lower dantian is a vermin called desire, in the central dantian a vermin called indulgence, and in the upper dantian the vermin called vanity. Left unchecked, the three vermin weaken and debilitate the three Hun. The lesser mandala of heaven practice we covered a few videos ago is one of the methods in inner alchemy utilized to clear or neutralize the three vermin. In Taoist folk belief, the three vermin record your transgressions, and on the day of Geng, in Japanese esoteric traditions, Kōshin, while you're deep in slumber, they leave the body and report your faults in these three areas to the god of destiny. Geng is the seventh heavenly stem in the Chinese lunar solar calendar, corresponding with yang metal, yang Jing. Shen is the ninth earthly branch associated with metal and monkey. In a 60-day calendar cycle, Geng is day 57, a day called Keeping Vigil on Geng Eve. Thus arose ritual practices found in Chinese Taoism and Japanese Shigendo, syncretized esoteric Buddhism and Shinto, called Keeping Vigil on Geng Eve. Every 60 days on Geng Eve, practitioners would keep vigil to prevent the three vermin from reporting their transgressions to the god of destiny. And there were all sorts of practices, from staying awake all night, ritual fasting, or certain specialized methods of breathwork believed to somehow placate these three vermin, or even spellcrafting and sorcery that was intended to permanently sever the three vermin from your subtle energy body, in effect vanquishing them entirely. In the He Shang Gong Yellow River Hermit's commentaries, it gives an interpretation of the phrase 营魄 from verse 10 of the Tao Te Ching.
在营魄，营魄魂魄也。人在魂魄之上得以生，当爱养之。
在营魄 refers to the Hun-Po soul, which all humans possess within, which we should cherish and nourish if we are to sustain life. This is verse 10 of the Tao Te Ching. The Yellow River Hermit's commentary explains the opening phrase and its connection to Xuan De, the hidden code. I'll leave the full passage on screen if you'd like to pause and read it. From a Taoist esoteric perspective, it's one of the most important passages for transcendent union with the divine. The Yellow River Hermit is telling us that the Tao Te Ching's passage on the hidden code, the key to unlocking the great mysteries, is knowledge and understanding of how one carries our Hun-Po. In other words, spiritual cultivation and all practices within the mysteries is fundamentally about how to cherish and nourish your Hun-Po, to reconcile the polarities and keep them in balance, to be a practitioner of the hidden code. To walk this esoteric path of Taoism, one must attain a mastery level of understanding of Hun-Po soul dualism, which, just to be clear, is innately non-dualistic. In terms of Hun-Po beliefs for the modern era, I think at the very least, its premise encourages you to be ever mindful of what's feeding your soul and what's draining or even fragmenting your soul. You know you have this one body and it's one whole unit, but it's many interdependent parts that make up the whole. And when something's wrong, you have to pinpoint where, what segmented part of the whole unit is not functioning the way it should. The concept of 3 Hun and 7 Po is a framework for how to pinpoint what part of you is fragmented, and then there are these long-standing folk practices for healing that part of your soul. A healer walks you through rituals likened to visualization techniques we use today in cognitive behavioral therapy, forms of meditation and Qigong practices that have physiological relaxation effects, and forms of spellcrafting or providing talismans and magical rituals that induce cognitive reframing. A lot of these folk healing practices remind me of modern-day emotional regulation skills and techniques. By the way, in certain instances, you are able to heal yourself, just like how in certain instances, home remedies or over-the-counter medication is all you need. But then, of course, in other instances, you're gonna want to see a doctor. And also, I cannot stress enough the importance of preventive healthcare, food as medicine, corrective behavior as medicine, and spiritual hygiene. In summary, soul dualism in Eastern metaphysics is the foundation of a traditional healing system and practice of folk medicine for the mind and for helping us regulate behavioral patterns. It's an indigenous counterpart to what today we refer to as behavioral health. Please help out this channel by liking this video, leaving a comment, and sharing this across social media, because apparently that is the offering of choice to the algorithm gods. Subscribe and hit that bell icon for alerts when the next module in this video lecture series is up on soul fragmentation and soul retrieval. If you would like to download a content outline of everything we've covered and more, plus the primary source citations, be sure to check out the companion blog post. As always, thank you. Your kindness, enthusiasm, and support mean so much to me.